Imagine following a map your entire life. You do, everything society told you to do.
Right.
You hit every single milestone, and you arrive at the exact destination you were promised, and, well, you feel absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that complete emptiness.
Exactly. You haven't failed, but you're suddenly just completely lost. And, usually when we talk about being lost or when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision, like engineering almost.
Oh, absolutely.
You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it and says, there it is, that's the problem.
Right, because it's binary. It's totally visible. You're either broken or not broken.
And it's incredibly comforting. Like, we really like things to be visible. But then you step into the world of psychological suffering, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just completely useless.
It doesn't apply at all.
Right. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky. Nobody hands you a map when you fall into depression or addiction or, profound burnout.
Which is exactly why mapping this territory is so incredibly crucial.
Exactly. And that brings us to today's deep dive. We are exploring excerpts from an expanded edition of this really incredible text, The Geography of Hell, A Cartography of the Underworld by Max and Claude.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is. And our mission today is to actually explore a map of psychological suffering. And the goal here isn't to just dwell on the dark and get thoroughly depressed. It's to provide orientation.
Yes, orientation is key.
Because if a place has a name, it means someone else has been there, mapped the coordinates, and survived it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because you don't usually wake up one Tuesday and just choose to enter hell.
No, almost never.
It's almost always this slow fade. It's sort of like walking down a gentle slope where the air just gradually gets thicker and the light gets a little dimmer every mile.
Yeah.
And you only realize you're underground when you finally turn around to look at the surface and realize you just can't see the sun anymore. That slow fade is such a critical mechanism to understand, especially when we look at the biology underlying all of this. The foundational premise we really have to establish here is that these psychological hells you find yourself sliding into, they're very often just human nervous systems running survival programs.
Survival programs.
Yeah. These are biological programs that were perfectly adapted for our ancient ancestors, but they're just massively misfiring under the unbearable, unprecedented pressures of the modern world.
Oh, wow.
For instance, if you're gripped by chronic anxiety, you aren't broken. You are running a highly efficient threat detection software meant to keep you safe from physical predators.
Right, like a tiger in the bushes.
Exactly. It's just completely maladapted for a 21st century world where the primary threats are abstract, like, social rejection or economic instability.
So it's essentially an evolutionary mismatch.
Precisely.
And before we plunge into the really intense fires of suffering, we have to start where that descent usually begins. It's a space the authors define as the vestibule of meaninglessness.
The gray area.
Yeah, the gray. And if you're listening to this and thinking, why do I feel so empty when I have everything? We have to be absolutely clear about the details here. This space is not sadness.
No, sadness is very different.
Right. Sadness is an emotion. It has movement and energy. This is an absence. It is a vacuum where the world is just entirely stripped of significance.
Think about the specific demographic that often finds themselves trapped here. The authors call them the successful.
The people who won the game.
Exactly. These are the people who, by all external metrics, did everything right. They got the corner office, the beautiful house, the family, everything the cultural map told them to want. And they stand in the middle of it, feeling completely hollow.
And society is so cruel to these people.
Oh, incredibly.
The immediate cultural reflex is to call them ungrateful. Like, look at everything you have. How dare you be depressed? But digging into this cartography, it sparked an analogy for me.
Let's hear it.
Imagine following a map to a promised oasis. You endure the desert, you finally arrive at the exact coordinates, and you find nothing but sand.
Right.
You aren't ungrateful for the spot you're standing in. The cultural map you were handed was just fundamentally wrong about where the water actually was.
That is a perfect way to put it. And what's fascinating here is the sheer physiological reality behind that feeling of arriving at sand. It is not a moral failing. It is a literal downregulation of specific neurochemical systems.
So biology actually changes.
Exactly. When you hit this vestibule, your dopamine system, which is the anticipation or the pull-forward neurotransmitter that makes you want to engage with the world, is severely suppressed.
Wow.
Simultaneously, your opioid system, which mediates feelings of warmth, safety, and interpersonal connection, It basically goes offline.
Which completely changes how we should look at philosophical solutions, right? Like
Oh, I know.
existentialism.
To-
The whole idea of existentialism, Sartre, is radical freedom. The idea that existence precedes essence and you can just decide what matters to you. It feels so empowering in a college classroom.
Sure, in theory.
But in this specific psychological hell, it is catastrophically incomplete.
Oh, absolutely. It's like telling someone with a shattered femur to just, radically decide to walk.
Right, just choose to walk.
Yeah, it doesn't work. You cannot cognitively will yourself to find things meaningful if the neurological apparatus required to generate the sensation of meaning is physically broken. The hardware is literally offline.
There's this heartbreaking reality for parents in the state, too. They look at their kids, they know they love them, but they feel that love from, as the authors put it, from behind glass.
Yes, that disconnected feeling.
The architecture of caring is completely intact. They're making the lunches, they're protecting their kids, but the felt warmth is inaccessible.
Right.
That has to carry an unbelievable amount of shame.
It's agonizing. And again, the culture tells them they're bad parents. But it's a structural symptom of this specific geography. So the question is, how do you get out?
Right, what's the exit?
Because the mind is trapped in this exhausting, frictionless loop of abstraction, you actually can't think your way out. The exit path often involves bypassing the brain entirely.
Game around the mind.
Exactly. You have to force the nervous system out of abstraction by focusing on tiny, undeniable physical details. The physical weight of a dog resting on your lap. The highly specific crunch of a piece of toast.
Or using pure physical exhaustion, right?
Exactly. Pushing the body to a point of intense physical exertion forces a metabolic reset. Because in this state of meaninglessness, the body still has more access to raw vitality than the mind does. You basically have to reboot the system from the bottom up.
But here is the causal trap. If the vestibule is the absolute agony of feeling nothing, human nature just abhors a vacuum.
It really does.
The brain will inevitably swing to the opposite extreme, desperately seeking a signal, any signal, that says something matters. And that desperate scramble leads us directly into the second circle, addiction and craving.
This is where the brain's most brilliant learning mechanisms are essentially weaponized against it. Human brains are optimized, pattern-detecting learning machines. Their entire job is to figure out what keeps us alive.
Right.
Addictive substances, or compulsive behaviors like workaholism, gambling, endless social media scrolling, they're essentially neurological liars.
Liars, I like that.
They hijack the system by sending a false, overwhelming learning signal that screams, This is the most important survival mechanism in the entire world.
The cruelty of the biology here just blew my mind. Think about a normal dopamine spike. Normally, a dopamine spike tells your brain, remember exactly what you just did because finding this berry bush just saved us from starving.
Exactly, it's a survival tag.
But a substance creates a spike that is unnaturally massive, and the truly cruel part, the very substance that teaches the brain this false, overpowering lesson simultaneously damages the prefrontal cortex.
Right. And the prefrontal cortex is the executive center. It's the braking system. It's the exact part of the brain responsible for impulse control, long-term planning, and rational willpower.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this completely dismantles the cultural morality story of addiction. We constantly tell people struggling with addiction to just make better choices.
We hear it all the time.
But relying on willpower to beat addiction is literally like bringing a rational argument to a neurological gunfight.
It's a great way to phrase it.
The brain cannot process your logical counter-argument because the actual tissue responsible for reasoning has been degraded by the substance itself. Craving isn't just wanting a glass of wine or wanting to check your phone. It is an embodied physical demand where the object of the craving becomes the only object in the entire universe.
The cognitive and attentional resources of the entire organism narrow down to a single point. It's not a passing thought. It's a biological imperative welling up from below the belt of rationality, demanding immediate relief.
It's survival to the brain.
Yes. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this biological reality is exactly why countries that decriminalize addiction and treat it as a medical issue, employing harm reduction strategies, see drastically better outcomes.
Because they remove the moral judgment.
Good, precisely. When we insist on treating addiction as a moral failing, as a sign of weak character or selfishness, we generate a specific, highly toxic byproduct. And that byproduct is the exact mechanism that locks the trap shut from the inside. we generate shame.
Which perfectly explains the architecture of the fourth circle of shame, because society's judgment becomes internalized. And there is a massive, crucial distinction we need to make here. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am something bad.
It is a fundamental difference in the structure of the human experience. Guilt maintains a critical distance between the action and the self. I made a mistake, but I am still a person of value.
Right.
That distance allows for remorse, it allows for apology, and it allows for repair. Shame entirely collapses that distance. You are the mistake.
And because shame insists that your fundamental essence is broken or toxic, it absolutely requires hiddenness. It operates on this primal, terrifying fear that if you are truly seen by another person, if they see the real you, you will be rejected and destroyed.
It's a survival instinct to hide.
So it creates this tragic, self-sustaining loop. You feel defective, so you hide. And because you hide, you never give the world a chance to give you the data that proves you can be loved and accepted exactly as you are.
Exactly.
Okay, wait, let me jump in and push back on this because I know exactly what some listeners are thinking right now.
Sure.
When we talk about the medicine for shame being self-compassion, isn't self-compassion just a trendy word for self-indulgence?
Oh, that is such a common fear.
Right, like, doesn't letting yourself off the hook just make you lazy? I know for a fact that sometimes I feel like my inner critic's absolute contempt for my mistakes is the only thing keeping me accountable and driving me forward.
It feels intuitively true, absolutely. But the neurological research shows the exact opposite. Shame-based contempt does not drive genuine accountability. It activates your sympathetic nervous system's threat defenses.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
When your inner critic is screaming at you, your brain literally perceives a predator. And what do we do when threatened? We deflect, we minimize, we get defensive, and we hide our mistakes because acknowledging them feels like a death sentence to our core worth.
Oh, wow. So the harshness actually prevents you from looking at the problem.
Exactly. Self-compassion does the reverse. It downregulates the threat response. It creates the internal psychological safety required for your prefrontal cortex to actually stay online, look at your failures honestly, take genuine accountability, and change your behavior, precisely because you aren't expending all your energy defending against the threat of being fundamentally worthless.
That makes so much sense. You just don't have the energy to fix the problem if you're too busy defending yourself from yourself.
Exactly.
So the ultimate exit from the circle of shame is the terrifying act of being fully seen by a trusted person, like a really good therapist or a deeply safe friend, and surviving it. Because when they see your darkest parts and don't run away, it breaks the architectural premise of the shame itself.
It provides the counter data the nervous system desperately needs.
But that brings up a terrifying paradox. If the cure for shame is opening up and being seen by others, what happens when the people we open up to use that vulnerability to destroy us?
That is the big question.
That is how we land in the frozen lake of betrayal. Trust is naturally like fluid water. It's responsive, it moves, it nourishes our relationships. But a profound betrayal drops the temperature, completely freezing the heart into the exact shape it held at the moment of violation.
And we have to ground that poetic metaphor in concrete neurological reality. What we mean by freezing is that your neuroplasticity in that specific relational domain literally halts.
It just stops.
Yes. It is a protective response of the nervous system, not a conscious choice. It's as involuntary as your pupil contracting when someone shines a flashlight in your eye. Your brain refuses to update its software about trust because updating means dropping the firewall, and dropping the firewall feels like death.
Especially when we're talking about foundational betrayal, this is when the violation comes from the very structures that are supposed to constitute the basic safety of your existence. Parents, partners, trusted religious institutions.
The people who literally map the world for you.
Right. When the people who are supposed to be the map makers of your reality betray you, it damages your ontological ground.
You start questioning your own perceptive apparatus. The brain says, if I was that completely wrong about the person sleeping next to me, or the parent who raised me, what else am I fatally wrong about?
Which explains one of the most tragic paradoxes of human behavior, why people who have been betrayed often end up choosing betrayers later in life.
It seems so counterintuitive.
Right. You would logically think someone who survived a horrific betrayal would sprint towards safety and healthy partners. But to a traumatized nervous system, safe people feel boring. They feel flat. Or worse, the unfamiliarity of safety actually feels dangerous.
Because it's unknown.
Meanwhile, the familiar chaos of a betrayer feels like love to a broken relational template. It's simply what the nervous system knows how to navigate.
The relational template was authored by betrayers. So the nervous system continuously seeks out the familiar baseline, even when that familiar baseline is actively harmful. And every time the cycle repeats, it just reinforces the deep-seated conviction that intimacy inevitably leads to injury.
I want to jump in here to clarify a radical redefinition of forgiveness that the authors bring up, which is so incredibly helpful when you're stuck in this ice.
Yes, this is vital.
Because we usually think of forgiveness as reconciliation or saying what happened was okay. It's not. Forgiveness is simply releasing the demand that the past should have been different. It's like refusing to spend your present tense energy continuously punching a brick wall of history.
I love that analogy,
You aren't doing it for the wall. You're doing it to stop shattering your own hand.
which is a beautiful way to frame it. But it raises the mechanical question, how do you actually unfreeze? Because you cannot selectively freeze trust. When you ice out the person who betrayed you, you inadvertently ice out your capacity for genuine intimacy with anyone else.
The ice spreads.
Exactly. The thaw is agonizing. It only really begins when the profound echoing isolation of the ice finally becomes more painful to your organism than the terrifying fear of re-exposure.
Okay, so whether you are currently trapped in the gray vacuum of meaninglessness, the desperate craving of addiction, the hiddenness of shame, or the frozen isolation of betrayal, how do you actually use this map to get out?
That's the ultimate goal.
We move to the final stage, the ascent. And the most important rule of the ascent is that the way up is not a return to your old self. Hell changes you. You are building a post-descent self.
And part of building that new self is completely abandoning the expectation of linearity. Recovery is a spiral. It is never a straight line.
A spiral.
Yeah.
That's reassuring.
It is. If you relapse or if you have a catastrophic week where the depression roars back, it does not mean you are starting over from zero. It means you are returning to familiar territory, but you are returning with more tools, more self-knowledge, and more resilience. You are doing the work at a higher level of integration.
So what does this all mean for you practically? There's this profound shift that has to happen. You have to stop fighting the hell and start working with it. Instead of spending 100% of your energy trying to not be anxious or not be depressed, you turn toward it and ask, what is this suffering trying to teach me?
You interrogate it.
Yeah. What unhealed foundational wound is this pointing to? What unbearable reality is this addiction actually managing for me?
And you cannot just think your way through those questions. The body keeps the score. Talk therapy is wonderful, but it is often insufficient on its own because these states, chronic depression, rage, trauma, are highly physiological.
They live in the body.
Exactly. They are locked in the nervous system, in the fascia, in the musculature. You need somatic movement. You need breath work.
Why breath work specifically? I mean, it always sounds so, I don't know, woo-woo to some people.
I know, but it's pure biology. Deep diaphragmatic breathing directly stimulates the vagus nerve, which is the biological master switch for the parasympathetic nervous system. It physically forces your body out of the fight or flight threat response and signals to the brain that you are safe.
Wow. Okay.
And above all, alongside movement and breath work, you need profound rest. People wildly underestimate the massive metabolic toll of psychological recovery.
Wait, say more about that, the metabolic toll.
Yeah, so your brain normally consumes about 20% of your body's energy.
Right.
But when you are doing the enormous work of emotional integration, synaptic pruning, and generating entirely new neural pathways to rewrite trauma.
Your brain is working overtime.
Exactly. Your brain is running a marathon every single day. That requires immense metabolic resources. It requires actual deep restorative sleep.
That reframes exhaustion so beautifully. You aren't lazy, you're under neurological construction. But the identity shift is often the hardest part of this ascent. Because when you finally leave hell, you lose the structure it gave you. The recovering addict is no longer the addict. The chronically depressed person is no longer the depressed one. All your survival mechanisms are suddenly obsolete.
You're in completely uncharted territory.
This liminal space, this in-between territory where you are no longer who you were but not yet who you are becoming is terrifying.
It is deeply disorienting. But as we synthesize all of this cartography, the final focus has to be on the light at the end of the ascent. Because it isn't the innocent, simple, unbroken light from before your descent. It is a complex, hard-won light. It inherently carries the shadows of what you survived.
It has depth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because you have walked through that specific dark, you possess a lived knowledge of the territory that cannot be learned in a textbook. It makes you uniquely, powerfully equipped to sit with others who are currently trapped in the dark without recoiling from their pain or offering them cheap, hollow reassurance.
Thank you for going on this intense, deeply human deep dive with us today. We really believe that orientation matters. Having a map doesn't magically airlift you out of the dark, but it proves unequivocally that you aren't the first person to stand at these coordinates.
You're never the first.
You are not uniquely broken. You are part of a shared, vast human geography.
The simple act of naming the territory is the very beginning of integration and healing.
But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over today, drawn from the unmapped territories section of this cartography. We've talked a lot about the people in the fire, but there is also the hell of the secondhand wound.
Yes.
This is the specific geography occupied by the caregivers, the therapists, the parents, the partners, and the friends who absorb the profound suffering of those they love simply through the act of caring for them.
It's a very real toll.
So even if you are lucky enough to be standing on solid, sunlit ground right now, whose hell are you silently standing adjacent to? How is your deep love for someone in the dark unknowingly drawing the borders, the limitations, and the boundaries of your own daily life?
It is a profound reminder that none of us are truly isolated. We are all deeply connected to these geographies, whether we are walking through them directly or holding the hands of the people we hold dear.
No matter where you are on the map right now, the territory always changes and the exits are real. Remember, you might feel like you're completely alone in those murky diagnostic waters, but there's a cartographer who has been there before you and left a trail of breadcrumbs. Until next time.